In the heart of a bustling American city, 17-year-old Maya Johnson navigated her daily routine with the resilience and grace that defined her. An honor student and aspiring violinist, Maya balanced her academic aspirations with responsibilities at home, assisting her single mother, Angela, in caring for her younger brother, Jamal. Their neighborhood, though vibrant, was not immune to the tensions that simmered between the community and local law enforcement. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Maya walked home from school, she noticed a police cruiser trailing slowly behind her. The officers inside, Detectives Harris and O'Connor, were notorious in the community for their aggressive tactics and discriminatory behavior. Maya's pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure, aware that any sign of fear could be misconstrued. "Hey you!" Detective Harris's voice sliced through the air. "Come over here." Maya turned to face them, her expression calm yet resolute. "Is there a problem, officers?" "We've had reports of suspicious activity in the area," O'Connor interjected, his eyes narrowing. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Maya knew her rights. "Am I being detained?" Harris stepped out of the cruiser, his demeanor menacing. "Listen, girl, we're just doing our job. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Summoning her courage, Maya responded, "I respect your duties, officers, but I haven't done anything wrong. I'd like to continue on my way home." Her assertiveness seemed to inflame Harris. He moved closer, invading her personal space. "You think you're smart, huh? Let's see some ID." Maya reached into her backpack to retrieve her school ID, her hands trembling slightly. As she handed it over, a small crowd began to gather, their murmurs creating an undercurrent of tension. O'Connor, still in the cruiser, spoke into his radio, calling for backup. The situation was escalating, and Maya could feel the weight of the community's eyes upon her. "This is unnecessary," she said, her voice steady. "I'm just trying to get home." Harris smirked, looking at her ID. "Maya Johnson. Well, Maya, you're matching the description of someone we're looking for." Before she could respond, a voice from the crowd shouted, "Leave her alone. She hasn't done anything." The officers turned their attention to the onlookers, the atmosphere thick with unrest. Sensing an opportunity, Maya took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. "Please, everyone, stay calm," she urged. "I appreciate your support, but we don't want this to escalate." Her words had a soothing effect, the crowd's agitation subsiding slightly. Maya then looked directly at Harris. "Officer, if there's a legitimate reason for this stop, I will cooperate fully, but if not, I ask that you allow me to go home." Harris's jaw tightened, his authority challenged not just by Maya, but by the collective presence of the community. Before he could respond, additional police units arrived, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the scene. A senior officer, Captain Reynolds, stepped out and assessed the situation. "What's going on here?" Harris gestured toward Maya. She was acting suspiciously. "We were conducting a stop." Reynolds looked at Maya, then at the gathered crowd. He could sense the volatility of the situation. "Miss, do you have any contraband or weapons?" "No, sir," Maya replied. Reynolds nodded. "Then you're free to go. Officers, stand down." Harris looked ready to protest, but a sharp glance from Reynolds silenced him. Maya exhaled, relief washing over her. She turned to the crowd, offering a grateful smile. "Thank you all," she said softly before continuing her walk home, her heart still pounding from the encounter. As she rounded the corner, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this incident was far from over. The tension between the community and the police had reached a boiling point, and she had unwittingly become a focal point. Little did she know, this encounter would set off a chain of events that would test her courage, resilience, and the bonds of her community in ways she could never have imagined. Maya couldn't sleep that night. The incident replayed over and over in her mind. Harris's menacing expression, the murmurs of the crowd, and Captain Reynolds's eventual intervention all blended into a haze of confusion and unease. She stared at the ceiling of her small bedroom, where the sound of her younger brother Jamal's breathing comforted her. "Why me?" she whispered to the dark. The next morning she awoke to a tense kitchen scene. Angela Johnson sat at the small table with a cup of coffee in her trembling hands. The local news played on their old television set, and the footage was unmistakable. A blurry video of Maya's encounter with the police, recorded by someone in the crowd. It was already going viral. "Local teen challenges police harassment." The caption burned into Maya's mind. "Mom," she began, guilt seeping into her voice. Angela turned to her daughter, her expression weary but proud. "I saw the whole thing. You kept your head high, Maya. That's what matters." "But now everyone's watching," Maya replied, sliding into a chair. "What if they come after us? You know how this works, Mom. People like Harris don't let it go." Angela sighed. "Maybe. But hiding from it isn't the answer. We've lived with this our whole lives, baby girl." She reached across the table, gripping Maya's hand. "You did good out there." Before Maya could respond, the doorbell rang. Angela frowned, getting up. Who would be here this early? When the door opened, standing on their porch was a face Maya didn't expect. Captain Reynolds. Angela froze, her body blocking Maya instinctively. "What do you want?" Reynolds held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Mrs. Johnson. I wanted to speak with your daughter, if that's all right." Angela looked back at Maya, uncertainty in her gaze. Maya hesitated but nodded. "It's okay, Mom." Reynolds stepped inside cautiously, his expression softer than the night before. "Maya, I want to apologize for what happened yesterday. Harris, he's a problem. I'm trying to deal with him, but it's complicated." "Complicated?" Maya snapped, her frustration bubbling. "He harassed me in front of everyone. That wasn't complicated. That was wrong." Reynolds sighed, as if bearing the weight of years of moral compromises. "You're right, and I don't expect you to trust me, but I want you to know I'm not blind to what's happening. Harris's actions weren't justified. That's why I'm investigating him internally." Angela scoffed softly. "And we're just supposed to believe you're going to clean up your department? Words don't mean anything." "I get that," Reynolds replied calmly. "But this goes deeper than Harris. He and others, they've been acting above the law for too long. I've been trying to build a case to hold them accountable, but I need evidence. Real evidence." Maya looked at Reynolds skeptically. "Why are you telling us this? What does this have to do with me?" "Because you're brave," Reynolds admitted. "The way you handled yourself yesterday, calm, measured, you stopped that situation from becoming much worse. People in this community look up to you now. You have a voice they respect." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't ask for any of that." "I know," Reynolds said, "but it's here, whether you want it or not. And if you're willing to help, we might finally get some justice, not just for you, but for everyone who's been hurt by officers like Harris." Angela's eyes narrowed. "You want to use my daughter as bait?" "No," Reynolds replied firmly. "I want to work with her, not put her in harm's way. But it's her decision, and I'll respect whatever she chooses." The room fell silent. Maya stared at Reynolds, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest. She thought of the faces in the crowd the day before, faces filled with anger, fear, and hope. People were looking for someone to stand up. "Why should I trust you?" she asked finally. Reynolds's gaze didn't waver. "Because I want the same thing you do. Justice." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that Reynolds's visit had marked the beginning of something bigger. At school, whispers followed her down the hallways. Friends asked if she was okay. Teachers gave her sympathetic looks. Even the principal called her in to check on her. Maya felt the weight of the spotlight growing heavier. During lunch, she sat alone, her thoughts spinning, until her best friend, Aisha, dropped her tray down with a loud thud. "So, You're famous now, Aisha teased, though her tone carried concern. Maya groaned, resting her head on her hand. Don't remind me. Girl, half the school is talking about how you stood up to the cops. You're like a hero or something. I didn't do anything special. I didn't want them to win. Well, you didn't let them win, Aisha replied with a proud smile. But now everyone's watching. Are you ready for that? Maya looked at her friend, conflicted. I don't know, Aisha. Captain Reynolds came to my house this morning. He wants me to help him build a case against Harris and the other dirty cops. Aisha's eyebrows shot up. Wait, what? Are you serious? Yeah, and I don't know if I can do it. What if it makes things worse? Aisha leaned closer, her voice low but urgent. Maya, they're already watching you. If Reynolds is serious about stopping Harris, maybe this is your chance to make a difference. Maya exhaled, her stomach twisting into knots. Deep down, she knew Aisha was right. The question was whether she had the strength to follow through. That night, as Maya lay awake once again, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Stop talking, Maya. This is your only warning. Her blood ran cold. Maya stared at her phone screen, her pulse quickening. The message burned into her vision. Stop talking, Maya. This is your only warning. The words were simple, but their meaning was clear. Someone was watching her. Someone was afraid of what she might do. She sat up in bed, her breath shallow, gripping her phone tightly. Her mind raced through possibilities. Was it Harris? One of his friends in the department? Or someone she hadn't even considered? The thought of telling her mother crossed her mind, but she hesitated. Angela had enough to worry about, working long hours at the diner, paying bills, and keeping Jamal out of trouble. Maya couldn't add more weight to her mother's shoulders. Instead, she typed a reply. Who is this? No response. She waited for minutes, staring at the screen, but the silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. The next morning, Maya carried the tension of the night into the school day. She moved through the hallways like a ghost, her ears buzzing with whispers she couldn't make out. Were people talking about her? Did someone at school send that message? At lunch, Aisha noticed immediately that something was wrong. Hey Maya, you good? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Maya lied, poking at her untouched food. Aisha wasn't buying it. No, you're not. What happened? Maya hesitated, then leaned in closer. Someone texted me last night. It was a threat. They told me to stop talking. Aisha's eyes widened. Wait, what? Who sent it? I don't know. The number was blocked. Aisha looked furious. Maya, you need to tell someone about this, like Reynolds, or your mom. Maya shook her head. I don't want to drag my mom into this, and I don't trust Reynolds yet. What if he's just using me? Aisha sighed. You can't just keep this to yourself. Whoever sent that text isn't playing games. They're trying to scare you. And if you don't do something, it's going to get worse. Maya nodded but didn't say anything. Her gut told her Aisha was right, but part of her still wanted to believe this would blow over. That evening, Maya stayed late at school for orchestra practice. The sound of violins filled the auditorium as she lost herself in the music, the one place where the outside world couldn't reach her. Her bow danced across the strings, each note carrying the emotions she couldn't say out loud. Fear, anger, hope. When practice ended, most of her classmates left quickly, chatting and laughing on their way out. Maya packed up her violin, lingering longer than usual. As she exited the school building, she felt the sharp chill of the night air. The street outside was eerily quiet. The school parking lot, half empty, was dimly lit by a single, flickering street lamp. Maya pulled her coat tighter around her as she started walking, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the stillness. Then she heard it, another set of footsteps. Her heart leapt into her throat as she glanced behind her. A dark figure stood at the far end of the parking lot, half hidden in shadows. Am I imagining this? She picked up her pace, her sneakers slapping against the pavement. The footsteps behind her grew louder. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears as she broke into a run, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She cut through the small park near her neighborhood, taking the shortcut home. But when she glanced back again, the figure was still there, closer now. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop running until she reached her street. The warm light from her house was a beacon in the darkness, and she sprinted toward the front door, fumbling with her keys. She threw the door open, slammed it shut behind her, and locked it. "Maya?" Angela called from the living room. "What's going on?" Maya dropped her backpack to the floor, her chest heaving. "Nothing, Mom. I'm fine." Angela appeared in the hallway, her face creased with worry. "Fine? You look like you ran a marathon. What happened?" I just took a shortcut home, that's all," Maya said quickly, forcing a smile. "I'm okay." Angela didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. "All right, go wash up. Dinner's almost ready." Maya nodded and hurried to her room, her hands still shaking. She pulled out her phone and opened the text message from the night before. It wasn't her imagination. Someone was out there, watching her. Boom! The next day, Maya made a decision. She couldn't pretend everything was normal anymore. After school, instead of heading straight home, she went to the police station. The building loomed in front of her, its cold brick exterior making her hesitate. "What am I doing here?" But she couldn't turn back. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The front desk officer barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak to Captain Reynolds," Maya said firmly. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Name?" "Maya Johnson." After a few minutes, Reynolds appeared, looking surprised to see her. "Maya, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. Reynolds nodded and led her to his office. He closed the door behind them, gesturing for her to sit. "All right, what's going on?" Maya hesitated for a moment before pulling out her phone. "I got a text message last night. Someone's threatening me." Reynolds' expression darkened as he read the message. "When did this happen?" "Late last night." "And then?" She swallowed hard. "Someone followed me after school today. I don't know who it was, but they chased me all the way home." Reynolds leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "This is exactly what I was worried about. Harris and his people don't play fair, Maya. If they think you're a threat, they'll do whatever it takes to shut you down." "Then what do I do?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I can't keep living like this." Reynolds leaned forward, his voice calm, but firm. "You let me help you. I can't promise this will be easy, but if we work together, we can take them down. You'll be safe, Maya. I'll make sure of it." Maya stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe he might actually mean it. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll help you." Reynolds nodded. "Good. We're going to get through this, Maya. I promise." But as Maya left the station that evening, a chill ran through her. She couldn't shake the feeling that making this choice had just put her in even greater danger. Outside, a car sat parked across the street. The driver's face was hidden, but Maya could feel their eyes on her as she walked away. The storm was coming, and Maya was right in the center of it. The days that followed were a blur of tension and whispers. Maya moved through life with a constant knot in her stomach. She hadn't received another text since the first threat, but that silence made it worse. It felt like the calm before a storm. Captain Reynolds had started working with her discreetly, asking questions about Harris and other incidents she'd witnessed over the years. Neighbors harassed, family members stopped, entire communities treated like suspects. Maya provided everything she knew, but Reynolds was clear. This can't get out yet. If Harris and his people catch wind of this, they'll double down. Each night, Maya barely slept, her ears alert for the slightest noise outside her window. She hadn't told Angela about the texts or the person who had chased her. It wasn't because she didn't trust her mother. It was because Maya couldn't bear to see the fear she knew would flash in her mother's eyes. Angela had already sacrificed so much. This was Maya's fight now. One afternoon, as Maya packed her violin in the music room after practice, the door creaked open behind her. Thinking it was Aisha, she said without turning, "I'll be out in a minute." No response. A chill rippled down her spine. Slowly, she turned to see Detective Harris standing in the doorway, his large frame filling the entrance. "Leaving so soon, Maya?" Harris's voice was deceptively calm, but his eyes burned with something darker. Maya froze, gripping the handle of her violin case. "What are you doing here?" Harris stepped closer, his polished shoes tapping ominously against the tile floor. "I hear you've been talking to Captain Reynolds." Maya's throat went dry, but she lifted her chin defiantly. "You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to talk to me." Harris smirked, his lips curling. "Rules don't matter much, kid, when people don't listen. You think Reynolds is going to protect you? You think your little stunt that day makes you untouchable?" Maya's heart thundered in her chest, but she refused to let him see her fear. "You're scared, aren't you? Scared of being exposed." For a split second, something flickered in Harris's eyes. Anger, uncertainty. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He stepped closer, leaning down so his face was inches from hers. "Here's some advice, Maya," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Keep your mouth shut. People who stick their noses where they don't belong, bad things happen to them." Before she could reply, Harris turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the sound of her own ragged breathing. That night, Maya sat in her room, shaking. Her phone buzzed, and she jumped, snatching it up quickly. It was Aisha. "Aisha. Hey, you good? You didn't answer my calls." Maya hesitated before typing back. "Maya, Harris came to school today. He cornered me." Her phone rang immediately. Maya picked up, and Aisha's worried voice spilled through the speaker. "Wait, what? He came to school? That's not legal, Maya. You have to tell Reynolds." I know," Maya said, pacing her room. I don't know what to do." He was so calm, Aisha, like he knew he could get away with it. "That's because he's used to getting away with it," Aisha replied bitterly. "But you're not alone. You've got Reynolds, you've got me, and, honestly, the whole neighborhood is watching now. You saw the crowd that day. People are fed up." Maya sat on the edge of her bed, squeezing the phone tightly. "What if this gets worse, Aisha? What if someone gets hurt?" Aisha was quiet for a moment before responding. "Maya, you can't control what they do. But you can control what you do. And you're already doing something brave. They're scared because you're telling the truth." Maya closed her eyes, tears prickling behind her lids. "I just want this to be over." "I know," Aisha said softly. "But you're stronger than you think, Maya. You've always been strong." The next morning, Maya made a decision. She couldn't let Harris win. She gathered every piece of information she had, notes, names, dates, and met with Captain Reynolds at the station after school. Reynolds looked through the pages she'd given him, nodding grimly. "This is good, Maya, really good. It connects a lot of dots." "But Harris knows I've been talking to you," she said urgently. "He came to my school. He threatened me." Reynolds's face hardened. "He did what?" "I didn't tell my mom yet. I didn't want to scare her." Reynolds ran a hand through his graying hair, anger flashing in his eyes. "This crosses a line. I'll deal with him, Maya. But you need to be careful. You're doing the right thing. But Harris is desperate now. Desperate men are dangerous." Maya nodded, though her hands trembled in her lap. "From now on, I'm assigning an officer to patrol your street at night, and I want you to have my direct number. If you see anything, you call me immediately. Got it?" "Got it," Maya replied softly. Reynolds gave her a small, reassuring smile. We're going to take him down, Maya. I promise. As she left the station, Maya felt a mix of relief and dread. She had taken another step forward, but each step seemed to pull her deeper into the fire. That night, Angela noticed something was off. Maya, you've been quiet lately. Is something going on? Maya opened her mouth to deny it, but the lie wouldn't come. She was so tired of carrying this alone. Mom! Her voice cracked, and Angela immediately rushed to her side. Something's happening. Harris, one of the cops, he's been threatening me. Angela's face paled. What? Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to worry, Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to put you or Jamal in danger. Angela wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her tightly. Maya, you don't have to carry this alone. We'll get through this, together. Late that night, Maya awoke to the sound of a car engine idling outside their house. Her heart pounded as she crept to the window and peeked through the curtains. A dark car sat parked across the street, its headlights off. Suddenly the car's engine revved, and it peeled away, tires screeching in the silence. Maya stepped back, her hands shaking. Harris wasn't backing down. The storm had arrived. Maya barely slept after seeing the car outside her house. The image of it sitting there in the darkness, like a predator watching its prey, haunted her every thought. Each creak of the house or rustle of the wind sent her heart racing. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. They know where I live. At dawn, she finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, only to be woken by her mother's soft but urgent voice. Maya, wake up, baby. Maya blinked, bleary-eyed, as Angela sat at the edge of her bed, clutching her phone tightly. Mom, what's wrong? Angela's face was etched with worry. There was an incident last night. Reynolds called me this morning. Maya bolted upright. What happened? Angela hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. Someone firebombed Captain Reynolds's car. The air left Maya's lungs. What? Is he okay? He's fine, Angela assured her quickly. He wasn't in it, thank God, but he wanted you to know things are escalating. Maya swallowed hard, her throat dry. This is my fault. They're doing this because I talked to him. Angela cupped Maya's face in her hands, forcing her to look up. Listen to me, Maya. This is not your fault. The people doing this, they're the ones to blame, not you. Maya nodded numbly, but guilt gnawed at her. How many people were going to get hurt because she decided to stand up? Later that day, Maya sat in Reynolds's office at the station, the smell of burnt rubber and smoke still clinging to his jacket. His face was weary, his usual calm replaced by something harder, determination mixed with exhaustion. They're trying to intimidate us, Reynolds said, leaning back in his chair. But they're making a mistake. This just proves how desperate they are. Maya's hands trembled in her lap. What do we do now? Reynolds looked her in the eye. We keep pushing forward. I've got internal affairs involved now, and some of Harris's allies are starting to feel the heat. But this means you need to be even more careful, Maya. I'm not scared of them, she replied, though her voice shook slightly. Reynolds gave her a sad smile. Courage doesn't mean you're not scared, Maya. It means you act even when you are. He handed her a small phone. This is a burner. Only I have this number. If anything happens, anything, you call me right away. Maya nodded, slipping the phone into her bag. Reynolds stood and rested a hand on her shoulder. You've already done more than most adults would, Maya. But we're getting close now. I can feel it. Maya wished she shared his optimism. The next few days were unbearable. The car that had parked outside her house reappeared every night, lingering just long enough for her to notice. At school, Maya felt the weight of unseen eyes following her everywhere. Was it Harris? Someone working for him? The paranoia gnawed at her. Aisha stayed close, refusing to let Maya be alone for too long. "They're trying to scare you," Aisha said one afternoon as they sat on the bleachers after school. "Don't let them win." "I'm trying," Maya admitted. "But I can't stop thinking, what if they hurt my mom? Or Jamal? I don't care what they do to me, but I can't let them touch my family." "They won't," Aisha said firmly, "because they'll have to go through all of us first." Maya glanced at her friend. "What do you mean?" Aisha gave her a small, fierce smile. "Everyone's watching now, Maya. People are mad. My brother said some of the guys in the neighborhood are organizing. If those cops try to come for you again, they'll have the whole community to answer to." Maya felt a flicker of hope, mixed with fear. "But that could make things worse, Aisha. I don't want anyone else getting hurt because of me." "It's not just because of you," Aisha replied. "People are tired of being afraid. You're not the only one they've hurt. You're just the first person who's making them pay attention." That evening, Maya and Angela were in the kitchen, making dinner, when the sound of shattering glass split the air. "Get down!" Angela screamed, pulling Maya to the floor as a brick smashed into their living room window. The sound of a car engine roaring away followed moments later, leaving the house in stunned silence. Maya's ears rang as she stared at the broken glass scattered across the carpet. Her heart thundered in her chest, adrenaline surging. Angela's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone to call the police. "I've had enough of this," Angela said, her voice trembling with anger. Maya picked up the brick carefully, noticing a piece of paper wrapped around it. Her hands shook as she unfurled it, reading the words scrawled in jagged handwriting. "This is your last warning." Angela glanced at the note, her face darkening. "They think they can terrorize us into silence, but they don't know who they're messing with." When the police arrived, Maya wasn't surprised to see Reynolds among them. He surveyed the damage, his face tight with anger, as he examined the brick and the note. "This has Harris written all over it," Reynolds muttered, though he didn't say it loud enough for the other officers to hear. Angela confronted him, her voice firm. "Captain, I want this to stop. I don't care what you have to do. You protect my daughter. You hear me?" "I will," Reynolds promised, looking from Angela to Maya. "I swear I'll keep you safe." Maya met his gaze, feeling something shift inside her. The fear she'd carried for days hadn't disappeared, but now it burned into something sharper. Resolve. "This ends now," she said softly. Reynolds nodded. "Yes, it does." That night, Maya sat in her room, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. The broken glass had been cleaned up, but the house still felt different, vulnerable, violated. She picked up the burner phone Reynolds had given her and stared at it. Then, a message buzzed onto her regular phone. Unknown. Number. "We warned you." Maya gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her fear turned into anger, deep, raw, and unrelenting. She stood and grabbed her notebook from her desk, flipping through the pages of notes she'd compiled on Harris and his allies. Names, dates, everything she'd learned. She had been gathering the truth, and the truth was powerful. "They want me to stop," Maya thought bitterly. "I'm just getting started." As she sat down to document everything she could remember, a new thought took hold, one that wouldn't let go. If they're this scared, it means we're close. Maya knew she couldn't turn back now. No matter the cost, she was going to see this through. The brick through the window had changed everything. Fear was no longer just lingering at the edges of Maya's life. It had crashed through her walls, loud and violent. The note was still burned into her mind. "This is your last warning." But instead of breaking her, it lit a fire. The next day, Maya walked into school with her head high, her shoulders squared, and a determination she'd never felt before. Aisha was waiting for her at her locker, concern etched on her face. "Maya, are you okay? After last night, I'm fine, Maya interrupted, her voice steely. Actually, no, I'm not fine. But I'm done hiding. Aisha's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Maya pulled her notebook from her bag, flipping through pages filled with her careful notes on Harris and his allies. I've been helping Reynolds build a case, right? But it's not enough. This has to go public. Aisha froze, her eyes wide. Public. Are you serious? That's dangerous, Maya. These people firebombed Reynolds's car. They threw a brick through your window. What do you think they'll do if you put this out there? Maya looked at her best friend with resolve. They're already doing everything they can to shut me up. But if I tell the truth, if I tell everyone, they can't hide anymore. The whole world will see them for what they are. Aisha stared at her, then nodded slowly. If that's what you're gonna do, then I'm with you. What's the plan? That evening, Maya sat at the dining room table with her mother. Angela had insisted they have dinner together, despite the tension looming over the house. Jamal sat quietly, stirring his mashed potatoes, clearly sensing the unease. Maya, Angela said finally, her tone soft but firm, I've been thinking about everything. About Harris, about Reynolds, about what's been happening to us, and I need to know the truth. Maya set her fork down and looked at her mother, guilt rising in her chest. I've been helping Captain Reynolds. Harris and some of his friends, they've been hurting people, Mom, for years, and Reynolds is trying to take them down. Angela's eyes narrowed. And you're right in the middle of this. Maya, these are dangerous men. I know, Maya said, her voice trembling. But someone has to stop them. They can't keep getting away with this. Not anymore. Angela's expression softened, and she reached across the table, taking Maya's hand. I'm proud of you, baby girl. But I'm scared, too. You don't have to do this alone. Maya smiled faintly, blinking back tears. I'm not alone. I promise. The next morning, Maya stood in front of her laptop, her camera propped up and recording. The blinds were drawn shut, and her notebook sat open beside her. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. This is Maya Johnson, she began, her voice shaking but steady. I don't know how to say this, but you need to hear the truth. The truth about Detective Harris and the people he works with. She spent the next 15 minutes laying out everything she knew, the harassment she'd endured, the threats, the incidents in her neighborhood, and the names she had written down. She didn't accuse anyone without evidence, but she spoke the truth as clearly as she could. I'm telling you this because I don't want to live in fear anymore. And I know I'm not the only one. My family, my friends, my neighbors, we deserve better than this. We deserve justice. She hit stop on the recording, staring at the screen for a long moment. Then, with trembling fingers, she uploaded it. The video was live. He'd see yacht and the response was faster and louder than she ever could have imagined. Within hours, Maya's video was everywhere, on social media, in group chats, even on local news channels. People she didn't even know were sharing it, commenting on it, talking about it. But with the support came backlash. Anonymous accounts flooded her inbox with hate messages. Some called her a liar, others hurled slurs. And then there were the threats. You've gone too far, Maya. You'll regret this. Angela found Maya staring at her phone that evening, her face pale. What's wrong? Maya hesitated before handing her the phone. Angela scrolled through the messages, her expression darkening. That's it, Angela said, pulling out her own phone. We're not just sitting here anymore. I'm calling Reynolds, and I'm calling the news. If these cowards want to threaten my daughter, they can say it to the world. Maya looked up, startled. Mom? No, Angela said firmly. You started this fight, Maya, and I'm proud of you for it. But you're not fighting alone anymore. It's time people see what's really happening. By the next day, Maya's story had become bigger than she could have imagined. News vans lined the streets of her neighborhood. Journalists knocked on the door, asking for interviews. Angela had agreed to speak, holding up the brick with the note tied around it for the cameras. "This is what they do to people who tell the truth," Angela said, her voice shaking with anger. "They threaten our kids, they terrorize us, and we're done being afraid." The video spread like wildfire. Other people in the community began coming forward with their own stories. Stories of harassment, threats, and abuse of power. Names were named. The wall of silence that had protected Harris and his allies for so long was beginning to crack. At school, Maya walked through the halls to whispers and stares, but this time the whispers weren't all judgmental. Some were admiring. A boy she barely knew stopped her in the hallway and said, "My cousin. They did the same thing to him. What you're doing matters." Maya blinked in surprise. "Thank you." Aisha was waiting at Maya's locker, a wide grin on her face. "You're famous, girl. They're talking about you on the radio and everything." Maya shook her head, overwhelmed. "I didn't do this to be famous. I just want it to stop." "It will," Aisha said. "You started something big, Maya. Bigger than all of us." But as Maya walked to her next class, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. "You think this is over? You're wrong. You'll wish you never opened your mouth." Maya stopped in her tracks, her hands clenching around her phone. They were still out there, and they weren't done yet. The days after Maya's video exploded were a whirlwind of chaos. Support poured in from all corners of the city. Neighbors thanked her, friends stood by her, and even strangers called her brave. But along with the support came something darker, an undercurrent of anger and resistance. The threats didn't stop. They only got worse. Angela had moved Maya and Jamal into her sister's house across town for a few days, hoping to shield them from the escalating tension. But Maya knew there was no hiding anymore. The truth she had unleashed was too big to be ignored. One evening, Reynolds called to update Maya. "I've got good news and bad news," he began. Maya sat cross-legged on the bed in her aunt's spare room, the burner phone pressed to her ear. "Give me the bad news first." Reynolds sighed heavily. "Harris is getting desperate. I have reason to believe he knows his days are numbered, and he's trying to cover his tracks. Some of the people in the department who were backing him are cutting ties to save themselves. He's cornered Maya, and cornered men are dangerous." Maya's stomach turned. "And the good news?" Reynolds's voice softened. "The evidence you gave me, along with other testimonies that have come forward, is enough to take action. Internal Affairs is already digging into Harris's record. It won't be long before we make an arrest." Maya clutched the phone tighter, a flicker of hope breaking through her fear. "So this could actually end?" "It will," Reynolds said firmly. "But I need you to stay safe until then. We're close, Maya. Don't let him scare you into silence now." The next morning, Maya woke to hushed whispers outside her room. She cracked the door open to see Angela pacing in the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what they say, James," Angela snapped, her voice trembling. "My daughter told the truth, and I won't let anyone hurt her because of it." Maya stepped out into the hall as Angela hung up. "Mom, what's wrong?" Angela turned to her, her face pale with worry. "The diner called. Someone came in asking about us. About you. They didn't say who it was. But it doesn't take a genius to figure it out." Maya's chest tightened. "They're looking for us?" Angela nodded. "I think it's time we leave the city for a few days, Maya. Until Reynolds says it's safe. It's too dangerous to stay here." "No," Maya said, shaking her head. "If we leave, it's like we're running, like they've won." Angela's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about winning or losing. This is about keeping you alive." Before Maya could argue, there was a loud knock at the front door. Angela froze, exchanging a panicked glance with Maya. "Get Jamal," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Now." Maya ran to the back bedroom where her little brother was playing with his toy cars. "Jamal, come here," she said urgently, pulling him close. What's going on? Jamal asked, sensing the fear in her voice. It's okay, she whispered, her heart pounding as she heard Angela's voice at the front door. Who is it? Angela called through the door. Ma'am, it's the police, a gruff voice responded. We need to talk to you. Angela hesitated. Show me your badge through the window. There was silence. Then the voice grew sharper. Open the door now, or we'll force our way in. Maya's blood ran cold. These weren't regular officers. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a text from Reynolds. Reynolds? Maya, don't open the door for anyone. I'm on my way. Her breath caught as realization sank in. Harris. Angela stood frozen as the pounding on the door grew louder, more insistent. What do we do? She whispered. Reynolds is coming, Maya said quickly, showing her the text. Don't open the door, Mom. Open up, the voice outside shouted, now furious. A loud thud followed as someone tried to kick the door in. Angela backed away, grabbing Jamal as Maya pulled her phone out again. Reynolds, she whispered into the burner phone. They're trying to break in. Stay calm, Maya, Reynolds said, his voice tense. I'm almost there. Don't engage them. Find a safe place to hide. Another thud. The door cracked slightly under the force of the kicks. Angela ushered Jamal into a closet in the back room, motioning for Maya to follow. They crouched together in the darkness, Jamal trembling in Angela's arms. Mama, what's happening? Jamal whispered, his voice small. Angela kissed his forehead. It's okay, baby. Just stay quiet. Maya gripped her mother's hand, trying to control her own shaking breaths. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the house, and heavy footsteps followed. Find her, a voice growled. Maya's heart pounded in her ears as the footsteps grew louder, closer. She could hear the men opening doors, knocking over furniture. Where are you, Maya? One of them taunted, his voice chillingly calm. We just want to talk. Jamal whimpered softly, and Angela covered his mouth, tears streaming down her face. Maya's entire body trembled, but she clenched her fists, her mind racing. Reynolds is coming. Just hold on. Suddenly, the front of the house erupted with noise, shouts, sirens, and the crackling of police radios. This is Captain Reynolds, a booming voice echoed. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up. The men inside shouted in panic. Heavy footsteps pounded toward the back of the house, and then silence. Minutes passed, like hours before a familiar voice called out. Maya. Angela! It's Reynolds! You're safe now! Angela pushed the closet door open slowly, peering out to see Reynolds standing in the hallway, his gun drawn, but lowered. Relief washed over her face as she gathered Jamal into her arms. Maya stepped out shakily, her legs weak. Reynolds's face softened when he saw her. Are you okay? She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. They were here. Harris sent them. Reynolds's jaw clenched. They're in custody now. This ends tonight. Hours later, back at the police station, Reynolds sat across from Maya and Angela. We have enough evidence now, on Harris and everyone connected to him. The men who broke in tonight are talking, and we'll have Harris behind bars by morning. Angela held Maya's hand tightly, her voice shaking with emotion. How do we know this is really over? Reynolds looked at them both, his gaze steady. Because people like Harris thrive in silence. But you broke that silence, Maya. You shined a light on what they've been hiding for years. They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt anyone. Maya leaned back in the chair, exhaustion crashing over her. It wasn't over yet, not completely. But for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Real hope. As Reynolds stood to leave, he paused at the door. You did something extraordinary, Maya. You gave your community a voice. Never forget that. Maya watched him go, his words settling in her heart. She hadn't set out to be a hero. She was just a girl who wanted the truth to matter. And now, maybe it finally did. The sun rose softly over the city, its golden light spilling across streets that had felt suffocating for weeks. But today, there was something different, something lighter in the air. The silence that had once cloaked the community in fear was finally broken, and the weight that had sat on Maya's shoulders for so long began to lift. Harris had been arrested early that morning. Reynolds had called to tell them the news, his voice edged with relief and pride. "It's over, Maya. We've got him. The DA is moving forward with charges, everything from harassment and misconduct to conspiracy. The men he sent to your house are testifying against him, and Internal Affairs has enough evidence to clean house." Maya sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, her heart pounding as she let the words sink in. "It's over." Angela stood by the stove, tears running down her cheeks as she turned to Maya. "You did it, baby. You stood up, and you won." Maya smiled faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We did it, Mom. All of us." The news spread like wildfire. Harris's mugshot was plastered across television screens, headlines reading, "Corrupt Officer Taken Down After Local Teen Speaks Out." It wasn't just Harris. Other officers who had worked alongside him were being investigated, their records pulled apart. The community that had been silenced for so long had found its voice, and people were finally being heard. Maya walked through her neighborhood that afternoon, feeling like she was seeing it with new eyes. People she'd known all her life stopped her on the street to thank her. An older woman named Mrs. Lawson, who had lived down the block for as long as Maya could remember, took her hands in her wrinkled palms. "You gave us hope, child," Mrs. Lawson said, her voice trembling. "What you did, it was brave." "My son." Her voice broke, and she looked away, blinking back tears. "They took him from me years ago. I thought no one would ever stand up to them, but you did." Maya swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "I'm so sorry for what happened to him." Mrs. Lawson squeezed her hands gently. "Don't you be sorry. You've made sure his story, and all the others, won't be forgotten. That matters." As Maya walked away, she realized for the first time that this wasn't just her story. It was their story. Her actions had sparked something bigger than herself, something the entire community could carry forward. At school, things felt different too. People who had ignored her before now offered smiles or nods of respect. Aisha was the first to greet her that morning, practically bouncing with excitement. "Girl, you're a legend," Aisha grinned, slinging her arm around Maya's shoulders. "Everyone's talking about you. Even my brother's friends said they want to throw you a party or something." Maya laughed softly. "A party? I don't know about that." "Well, you deserve it," Aisha said firmly. Then her tone grew serious. "I'm proud of you, Maya. I always knew you were strong. But what you did? It's more than strong. You changed things." Maya felt a swell of emotion, smiling at her best friend. "I couldn't have done it without you." Aisha shrugged, grinning. Yeah, I'm still waiting for my shout-out when they make a movie about this." The two of them burst into laughter, and for the first time in weeks, Maya felt normal. In that evening, Maya and her mother sat on the porch of their home. The broken window had been replaced, but Maya could still remember the sound of the glass shattering, the fear that had gripped her in that moment. Now, though, the house felt safe again. Jamal sat on the steps, playing with his cars, blissfully unaware of how much his sister had changed the world around him. Angela watched him for a moment before turning to Maya. "You know," she said softly, "I used to tell myself things would never change, that we just had to survive and keep our heads down. But you taught me something, Maya." Maya turned to her mother, surprised. "What do you mean?" Angela smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You showed me that survival isn't enough. We deserve more than just getting by. We deserve to be heard, to be respected, You fought for that, and you won. Maya blinked back tears, her voice soft. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You taught me to stand tall, no matter what. Angela wrapped her arm around Maya, pulling her close. I'm so proud of you, baby girl. Maya rested her head on her mother's shoulder, letting the quiet of the evening wash over her. For so long, their lives had been filled with fear. Fear of the police, fear of speaking out, fear of being targeted. But now, there was something else. Peace. During the following weekend, the community held a gathering at the park. People brought food, music played from speakers, and children ran around laughing. But beneath the celebration was something deeper. Unity. Maya stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as neighbors greeted each other, old grudges forgotten in light of a shared hope. Reynolds approached her, his hands in his pockets, a small smile on his face. You did good, Maya, he said, stopping beside her. It's not often someone your age changes the world. But you did. Maya looked up at him. It's not just me. This happened because people finally came together. Reynolds nodded, his expression thoughtful. You gave them something to believe in. That matters. As Maya looked out over the crowd, she spotted Mrs. Lawson sitting on a bench, talking to a group of young kids. Aisha was dancing near the speakers, laughing loudly as she pulled others into her rhythm. Angela was chatting with other mothers, her face bright and happy, in a way Maya hadn't seen in years. Jamal ran up to her, grabbing her hand. Come play with me, Maya. She smiled, squeezing his hand. All right, let's go. Jamal pulled her toward a group of kids playing soccer, and as Maya ran after him, her laughter joined the chorus of joy echoing through the park. For the first time in a long time, the community felt alive, unbroken, undefeated, and filled with hope. Maya had stood up to the storm, and now the skies were clearing. Epilogue. Months later, Harris was convicted on multiple charges, along with several other officers who had enabled his abuse. The trial had been long, grueling, but the evidence Maya helped gather had been undeniable. The city began implementing reforms, and though the road was long, progress was being made. Maya's name had become a symbol of courage, though she often shied away from the attention. One evening, as Maya prepared for her graduation, she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her cap and gown. She thought of everything it had taken to get here, all the fear, the fights, the threats, but also the hope, the knowledge that standing up for the truth had made a difference. Angela appeared in the doorway, pride shining in her eyes. You ready? Maya smiled, turning to face her. Yeah, I am. As they walked out the door together, Maya glanced up at the sky. It was clear and bright, the sunlight warm against her face. A new day had begun, and Maya Johnson, daughter, sister, student, survivor, had made it possible.